Hey there, Advanced American Lit and American Lit. This is going to be a short lecture on the poem The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. This is an example and one of the prime examples of modernism in literature. This specifically is modernism in poetry. The poem was written in 1923, so 4 years, or roughly 4 years after the end of World War I, and we are firmly into the lost generation period of American literature, which is part of modernism. Now, as we've learned with the lost generation period, these were a number of authors who wrote a new way of presenting literature because they viewed the world very differently than before World War I. As we get into some of the short stories, they're going to look like short stories. They're going to read like short stories. But they're going to be different. And we will get to that when we get to the short stories. This specifically is the way poetry was viewed by modernism. The first thing I want to point out with this poem are there are 16 words. 16. That's all this poem is made up of. 16 words. There's also no punctuation whatsoever. There is no capitalization whatsoever. Yet it is one sentence long. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Now you're probably saying to yourself, how in the world is that a poem? Because we are used to floral poems. For example, here is a poem by Emily Dickinson from the 19th century. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore, and yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round a wooden way of ground or air or aught, regardless grown a quartz contentment like a stone. You see, it's rhymes. It's got this floral language to it. It feels like poetry, right? But the red wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So simple. So to the point. It doesn't mince words. It gets right to the point. But it is so deceptively simple. There is so much going on in this poem. So much. And that is the brilliance of modernism in poetry and in literature. It might not look like much, but there's so much there. As the great Han Solo used to say, she might not look like much, kid, but she's got it where it counts. That was about the Millennium Falcon. And I'm going to say that exactly about the red wheelbarrow. So let's get into this. All right. First of all, take a look at the first line. So much depends upon. Okay, 4 stanzas. Each stanza is 2 lines long. So much depends upon. And notice how there are 3 words in each stanza and then 1 word underneath. I know he kind of cheats a little bit by separating wheel and barrow, but he does that on purpose, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rain water beside the white chickens. If you took out the second line of each stanza it would read, "So much depends, a red wheel glazed with rain beside the white." It would make no sense. So the word that is underneath the top line is necessary. And in effect, so much depends upon the word that's underneath each line. A red wheel depends upon the word barrow to make it make sense. Glazed with rain. Rain what? Rainwater. Right? So there is something metaphorical there and something symbolic in the form right there, where William Carlos Williams is actually making lines depend upon the line underneath it to make sense. Now, when we think of a wheelbarrow, we think of a farm. And he actually wrote this while looking out the window because he was a dentist as his day job. And he looked out his New Jersey office to a farm. And he saw a red wheelbarrow. And he started to think about what that means to that family. A small farm depends upon a wheelbarrow for a lot. A lot. If they didn't have a red wheelbarrow, or a wheelbarrow in general, their lives would be a lot harder. So he thought about how a farm depends on one little thing at times. What good is a farm if you don't have a wheelbarrow to help tend it? What good is school this year without having a computer because everything's online? Right? So that's what William Carlos Williams was thinking about. The little things that actually mean a lot in our lives, and we don't realize it. So he wrote a poem that looks like it doesn't mean much, but it means everything. That is the brilliance of the red wheelbarrow. And so he puts that in form, the way it looks, by having lines depending on words underneath. Just like a family farm would depend upon a wheelbarrow. Now, I'm going to blow your mind even further. Look at the way the lines in the stanzas look. There is a line and then something underneath. And now I want you to imagine a wheelbarrow. Perhaps the wheel itself, and then the main part of the wheelbarrow. Or perhaps this are the handles that you lift up of the wheelbarrow with the wheel. Yes, my friends, I'm not making this up. He absolutely wrote it in a way so that the stanzas would also look like little mini wheelbarrows. I'm going to let that sit for just a second because you're probably sitting there thinking, Mr. Biles is insane. There's no way. No, he did. And once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. A couple other things in this poem. Look at the word red. He chooses red. It could be blue, it could be green, but he chooses a red wheelbarrow. There's a point to that. When we think of the word red, we think of blood. We think of the heart. And he's saying that the wheelbarrow is the heart, the lifeblood of this farm. So it's red. Look at the white chickens. White. When we think of white, we think of the opposite of black, right? White is the opposite of black. Well, black is death, so white must mean life. And the chickens are life. Because it's nourishment, whether through eggs or meat. Excuse me, poultry. But regardless, it's nourishment. So if the wheelbarrow is the heart, The chickens are the nourishment. And then finally, the glazed rainwater. When something is glazed, when you have a donut that's glazed, it's shiny, it's shimmering. Well, he's showing that this wheelbarrow is shining and shimmering. And when we think of something shining, we think of it as ethereal, somewhat holy, spiritual, saintly. Now, he could have rephrased this sentence in many different ways, but he put it in this order because he wanted you to understand the first thing that this family farm depends upon is a red wheelbarrow. And that wheelbarrow shines like a beacon of hope. And it is right next to the nourishment that this family gets from the farm. They're interconnected. He doesn't capitalize anything in this poem because he wants you to understand that these aren't heroic things. These aren't massively important things on a supernatural scale. It is the simple things in life. And he does not put punctuation in this poem because there's no beginning and no end to life. It is just there. It's in the middle. It was there before and it was there after. So that is The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. And I hope you can see a little bit more now of what modernism poets and modernism authors were trying to go for. Giving a ton of symbolism, metaphor, and meaning with as many words as you need. No more, no less. All right, please move on to the Google form and answer a few questions based on this lecture. Then you're going to move on to one other poem by William Carlos Williams entitled, This Is Just to Say. It's a short ed puzzle, and I think you're going to find the poem, well, as the Brits would say, quite cheeky.